Good evening, everyone. It's March the 12th, 2025. I'm let Julie's video run. It's doing quite well. I wanted people to hear what Julie had to say on some questions and that I wanted some answers to and see what her opinion was and whether some of her opinion agreed with some of my opinions as well. So that brought a lot of interesting things to the forefront. And I think there's been so much going on this week as well, so there's some catch up to do. But I wanted to give my opinion and my views and kind of review her video that she just put up. So I'm going to start today with some of the stuff that, one of the things that we've also talked about in other videos too is people coming in from other places, which are overcrowding as well our shelters here. And I do feel very strongly that in the small communities or across the country, wherever they do come from, there should be services available for these homeless people. Definitely. And they shouldn't be coming into the big cities here and overwhelming our services. So, and another thing was about the prison. I wanted to see what she thought about the prison because I know that the Kingston Pen, as we used to call it years ago when it was in operation, being one of the oldest prisons, well, definitely I would say the oldest prison in Canada. And it was very notorious for some of the stuff that went on, and there was certainly no rehabilitation that went on, from what I'm understanding, from what was in the prison, because I had a friend that I knew years ago who was in the prison, and it was for very serious crimes that that prison was running for as well. So there was probably a lot of things going on because when he came out of the prison, he was one of the lucky ones. He made it out because there was no rehabilitation in that. But with him, he was lucky. He met a girl. Very fortunate. She stuck it out with him. She showed him what a normal life was, and he started appreciating her. So that was a big thing when they met up. So they had their differences and their opinions, and they had their rough spots for a while. But the one thing the blessing that came along was that she got pregnant, and they had a little girl, and that changed him totally. And he said, I never want to go back to prison, and I want to do whatever I can to make my little girl's life better. So they stuck it out together. They ended up being a really good couple together. So for him, that was a blessing. She was able to show him what a normal life looked like. She helped him with the ins and outs and get through adjusting as well to coming out of prison to our civilian life, if you want to put it. It's almost like being kind of in the army and having to come back to a kind of form of civilian lifestyle. And they raised a beautiful little girl who never got into trouble, ended up, I believe, with a good government job as well. So that was a success story from that one. But so many that came out of that prison never made it, in the sense they went back to crime, drugs, you name it. It was not a good experience at all for them. And this is what is happening if they do not have the chance to have rehabilitation, come out and have the supports that they need. That was the same thing, again, as I've said before, with the mental institutions years ago. They just kind of threw them out, the mental institutions, onto the streets, basically, with no supports. So this is why I'm very, very into supportive housing. Because and one of the things I thoroughly believe is that everyone has the right to a roof over their head, and certainly the basic needs that we all have that we need in our lifetime. They need to be supplied those to them. Whether it's they can do it on their own or whether they need the supports there, they have that right as a human being. Even if they're flat out on the sidewalk, down with the drugs, or they're walking around and they don't know what la land they're in, and they're wandering out onto our streets, and which has been another problem because people around here, when they see these people walking around and off the sidewalks and that, you have to drive with one foot on the gas pedal and one on the brake to make sure you don't hit them, because I've seen so many near misses as well during the pandemic. So, and then of course, the other thing too is that she's talked about how people get hooked on the drugs and how they're ganged up on. And I can talk about this myself on a personal experience. Now, I knew this girl, well, I met her, and it was, again, this is why I have mentioned before in my videos that when I started my videos, it was after I saw what was going on at St. Bridget's Church, after that fraction of the convoy came in and took over the church, and what they did to the homeless people. So sitting there on the protest line, I got a first-hand experience of what was actually taking place. And of course, with the convoy people, oh yeah, they put up a big show in front of the cameras. Oh, buddy, oh, this is my buddy, come on in here, you know, we were helping to feed the homeless. And of course the homeless thought it was great when they were up in front of Parliament Hill there, and they were handing out all this food as well. So they thought they were all their friends, until they started kicking them off the property and using the police to do it. And of course they hadn't even paid for the property, which they were supposed to buy that property. So I met this girl, or woman, I should say, not girl, but she was a woman, middle-aged woman. And she was traumatized. I know, I've spoken to her, and I've talked to her on my videos before. So, but I'm not really going to fully identify who it was. But she has a lot of mental problems. And it was becoming more obvious. But it was interesting because when I was sitting across from the church, it was the other party who organized the protests, and that was everyone in the Ottawa area probably knows who Dina Sharif is. She's the one that was organizing the protest up on with the convoy. So she was sitting there with me, and she was protesting. I was more like watching. She was more doing the protest. But watching this, and I'm more of one, I like to sit back and observe and see what's actually going on, because that was what I was trained as a security guard, was to observe what was happening around me. So I was just observing these things, and she got kicked off the property. She was crying, and Dean and I made friends with her. So Dean and I were very involved with this particular woman in different ways, but very closely involved, trying to help this woman out at the same time. So when she needed things for her tent, for example, she'd get her blankets and whatever she needed to put in her tent. She had her tent stolen. She got another tent. She was in the park sleeping. Dina was even kind enough to cook meals for her. So she got nice home-cooked meals brought down to her. So we did a lot for her. So, and then of course she came back on me. But the big thing that happened was one day, while on the protest line, she comes up and she's all excited, and she's showing me this postcard of this landlord apparently that lived in the Lower Town area here. And it was interesting because she said, well, I can get a place. And he said, but I haven't got my money in yet. And I said, well, yeah, but you're only on what, ODSP, whatever? And she said, well, yeah, but I've got a settlement coming. And so she's all of a sudden, she's all excited, and she wants to rent this place. And so we got talking, and it turned out that she got several $1,000s. There was thousands of dollars involved on the settlement that she actually got when she did get it on this particular day of the week. And so this day of the week, she showed up with money in her wallet. Now, I wouldn't have seen it if Dina's young daughter hadn't been there, because her young daughter was making those little friendship bracelets and selling them for like 50 cents each or $1 each, whatever, to make a little bit of money. And she wanted some change. So I'm sitting there in the chair. They're sitting on the ground beside me, and Dina's kind of coming up beside me too. And what we're seeing is she's opened up her wallet, and she's Dina's daughter wanted a bit of change, so she was handing her some change. And this guy, he first came up, and it was kind of interesting because he was walking in the middle of the street, and he was, yeah, ha, ha, and he was acting like he was all doped up and all over the place. And then he was going around the church, and then he came back up the other street, and then he went down another street, and he was walking down the middle of the street acting like he was just right out of it. And so he came up, and he was sitting there, and then he starts talking to her, and it turns out that this guy did have a place. I found out, thankfully, through the community. That's where I got a chance to meet a lot of the community here in Lowertown, and my good neighbors as well, and that he did have a place for rent. But this place is always up and down for rent. And so we're sitting there, and then he came up, he's sitting on the ground, and there she's got her wallet open. And she was going to give him money for this. And all of a sudden, I'm looking at all these $50 bills looking at me from out from her wallet. And, oh boy, how much do you have on you today? You know, and he's looking at this. And then the interesting thing is he got a phone call right in front of me. I actually got a little film of this, which was real cute. I was there because I pretended I was doing filming on the church in front of me. And I overheard him talking. And he asked the person where they were, and he said they were behind their church. So he was involved with the people from the convoy that were occupying the church. And I'm looking at all those $50 bills in her wallet, and I'm going, uh-oh, this is not good. So he left. I had a chance to talk. I pulled Dina aside and explained what was going on and what I overheard. We became both kind of alarmed, so we both started talking to her at the time. And so she was all set to meet him later and hand him over this money. And in the conversation, you know, Dina is a property manager. She rents out properties, and both of us came up, well, have you got a lease for this place? Because that was one of the questions I asked, because she'd asked, she told me earlier that she'd had got a place, paid the guy. She came up with a truck ready to move in, and then got totally kicked out and lost her whole deposit, which was several $100s that she lost. And I think this, from what I'm understanding, that the money that she got in the bank was the last portion of the settlement. And I think she was waiting for that. And I think that other part of the portion was where she got swindled out of this extra money for the rent. And so Dana and I were talking, and we finally talked to her, and I said, you cannot be walking around with that kind of money in your wallet. That's dangerous for you. And trying to explain to her. And I finally talked to her, and I said, you don't have to worry about me. I will hang on to that $900. That's what it ended up being. She had $900 in $50 bills. And she had plus a few other extra dollars. So I said, well, I'll leave you with a few extra dollars. I'll hang on to your money. Anytime you need it, you know where to find me. She knew Dina. And then Dina and I became quite alarmed. And I said, Dina, she sleeps here in the park at night. This guy's going to come back for her. And Dina and I said, yes. So we were talking about it, and Dina said, I'm going to get somebody to babysit my daughter tonight. I'm going to bring my car back, and I'm going to sit overnight and watch her, which is exactly what Dina did. And what ended up happening was he did come back twice and try to intervene to see if he could get the money. But fortunately, there was no money on it, and he did finally leave because Dina was there to intervene so that she did not get attacked or hurt that night. So this is, and then later, because she'd been talking about all this money that she'd been getting, people were, of course, coming up to her. She was buying them some liquor and stuff like that. That's how she thought she had to make friends with these people. So this is a ploy that, as Julie has said, that they come up with the people who are weak or in need, and they'll give them a cigarette or something, and they'll befriend them. So this is how they get involved with things. And it continued on for a while, but she got scared because they knew it. So I kind of took her in like overnight, like I did when I talked with Julie, because the park, apparently her tent caught fire in the park, and so she didn't have a place. She was scared, terrified of going into the shelters. So we had got a place for her through the community. We worked on getting another shelter for her. The workers came to talk to her, and she refused to go. So I got kind of caught in the middle, kind of stuck with her. And then when Julie kind of stepped into the picture, she kind of knew her. And but the two of them couldn't get along together. So what ended up happening, it's a very long story to even try and explain it over here, but in the end, what ended up happening was because she was touching things, I caught her one night, and she was, and I was saying, "What are you doing?" When I walked in the bathroom, she had a big brush, and she had a cuticle and her nail back, and her finger was all purple, and she was complaining about that there were snakes or spiders coming out of the end of her fingers. And then I was getting sicker at the time. This is the sort of the start of how I ended up in the hospital that I talk about for 6 weeks. And I think it's important that people realize just how they can get hooked into things very easily, being nice. So anyhow, I realized, what is she on? And then the other thing was, I had rules and regulations, and she couldn't follow them, like no booze. And then I found out she was definitely an alcoholic, because one morning she's going to take the garbage out, and I'm seeing all these bottles of liquor that she's been hiding in her bags all over the place. So she's been sipping away at her booze. So that's definitely an indication of addiction problems right there. Then she was also hooked on the pot and smoking out my window. And of course it was winter. And again, I told her, you cannot smoke in my apartment. It's a non-smoking apartment. I have asthma and bronchitis. You cannot smoke. She failed to do that. Then she started getting into fights with Julie. She was taking some of her money when she couldn't handle things, and she took a motel on the Quebec side for a few days. And then I came down sick, and that's when Julie found me on the floor, fortunately, and was able to help. She stuck it out with me. I really have to praise Julie for that. She really helped me when I needed the help, and I was down and out. And Julie and I discussed, she had to go when she came back anyhow. So when she phoned me, I told her she's going to have to stay there. I'm in the hospital, and she wants her stuff. And I said, well, I'm sorry, you're going to have to wait till I get out of the hospital. So that's how I kind of ended up in the hospital, because what happened was I thought I had the flu or a cold virus, and I couldn't understand why I wasn't getting better. I should have taken a better look at my finger, but I think I was a little out of it, because I had a finger turning blue and all purple and whatever you want to call it by the time I got to the hospital. So it turned out I ended up with sepsis. So this was something that is common, that if someone has an infection, someone comes and they touch something, and someone comes along and touches it behind them, that they can get this infection. It's just something, and this is why we use those Lysol wipes and everything during the pandemic. That's why we were cleaning everything up. So I got an infection from her. So it was not a good situation, but this is what I'm talking about when I talk about how hard it is for people to want to help out, and they get hooked in different ways. Some get hooked on the drugs. Well, I don't take drugs, so except my diabetic drugs, which I have to take. That's for life reasons. That's for sure. But this is, there was a lot of problems. And like I said, Dina is part of the story as well. Julie is part of the story. So you have to pick and choose, because when you want to help someone, because they're great con artists. That's the thing. And people get sucked in by them. Now, I was just in a position where I wanted to help her, which was good. I became her bank. But every time she went to the bank to take it, like for that $900, she'd drop by, or I'd give her so much per day, so she wouldn't be having a whole $900 on her. So, she might want $25, $30. And I say, that's fine. I give her that so that she didn't have a whole slew of money on her. So people wouldn't rob, she wouldn't get robbed too much. So it ended up being quite a situation that I found myself in as well, because I was really trying to help her. Because every time we went to the bank, I would escort her to the bank. Now, what I've seen in the past, that people saw her knowing she had money, but they didn't want to approach her because she had me with her. So she'd go take out money in the bank, but they wouldn't approach us because I was a witness, and that kind of scared them off. So then I go back, we go back to my place. The money, I put more money aside for her, and that I hold it so that she didn't have to go to the bank constantly to do it. I became her banker, so to speak, to help her out. So it was quite a situation, and in the end, I had to say, no, you cannot come back. And so she could not understand that. There was a lot of other things that were showing that the woman was extremely mentally ill as well. And I'm certainly not a professional to help out. So I know there are a lot of people who are well-meaning. I know I am. It's part of my kindness, and it's the way I was brought up. And this is one of the things. So I just wanted to give people a little bit of an idea on that. And I know this is going to be a long-running video, but I think I owe people to understand that this is a serious problem. And I understand about the ganging up there. And then when Julie talks about seeing the women crying at Rideau Street, I can actually confirm that too. Because every time I go into Rideau Street and I go to into the women's washroom, quite often you see one of these homeless women crying. She's crying over a guy, and stuff like that. And she's being bullied or hurt. And sometimes you see them with bruises on them. Sometimes you see them in the mirror in the washroom trying to put makeup on to cover a bruise. Or they think, oh, if I look really good for the guy, I really love him, I love him. And they really get these women believing that they love these women, and they treat them so horrific. And as I said before, at night, sometimes during the summer when the windows are wide open, the street over, you can hear a woman screaming and running from a guy, or running even past my windows. I've seen it, where she's just getting harassed overnight. So it's very, very dangerous for them on the streets as well. So as much as I feel sorry for them, this is why I'm pushing, and I'm going to keep up on pushing the videos to get these people a place where they can be safe. And as Julie said, even if it's a prison, and I can at least lock a door and I have a safe place. That's all I want, a little safe place to be. So that is that part of it. And then another thing, as I've talked about too, is I really think the proceeds of crime should go to the victims here, because it's costing the taxpayers a lot of money. And look what's happening at the border. To strengthen up our border, they put $1 billion into strengthening it up. And of course, Trump is not taking any of that. And we're in the war with the tariffs going on as well. But I really agree with this, because we're seeing it in long term, in that what's happening in Ukraine right now is because when the UN confiscated all the boats and the cars and stuff from the oligarchs and from Russia, they put that money aside. And so now, with the United States not wanting, with Trump particularly, not wanting to give them money for weapons and stuff, or now they're going to let Ukraine have it. They're going to be able to have purchasing power as well for Ukraine to defend themselves. So that is the way it should be. So, and the other thing is, again, even on a more local level, with the tariffs, for example, that we have on now, for our steel industry, just as an example, and those who are being affected by it, and the workers who are being laid off here in Canada, it's going to be good, because the tariffs that we get, now the Liberal government has been really good, just like they did during the pandemic. They put money aside, they helped us out. There was a CERB checks and checks to help the businesses and that. And as I've said, there was mistakes on that too, because people got it that shouldn't have. But people were able to live and got through the crisis. So what they're saying, the government now, is that the money that we get, now that we've put tariffs on their goods from America, anything that comes in from the proceeds of that is going to be added to what they've put aside to help pay the workers who are being laid off in that. So that is because they're not criminals. It's not crime. Well, it is crime in a way, when there's no need for this, because we didn't start this war. We're just going to finish it if we can. And so it's good, because the workers are going to have some kind of money coming in, even if they can't work because of the situation again. And it's not because they're in lockdowns. Everybody really wants to go work and get their money. So I don't want to make it any longer today, but I really believe in that, and I think that the government should set up an operation for whatever we confiscate at the border, if it's the border, from the states coming in with the proceeds from their drugs coming into Canada, as well as anybody from Canada going out, and we catch them with drugs as well. Any of the proceeds should be going back to the victims for affordable housing, to make sure that they get affordable housing or subsidized housing, and as well as making sure that it also pays for workers to come in and literally help these people. It shouldn't all be the burden of the taxpayer. We should not all have that burden, for the simple reason that we've got our healthcare system. That money that's being used for all the crime could also be put to better use to build up our healthcare system, and that's just a good example and what we need. So I'm going to leave it there today, everyone, and there's more coming, but I just wanted to talk to people, give them a little bit more information, and say a lot of what I do talk about is firsthand experience. And that's the thing about being 72 years old. I've been around the block more than a few times, and I've been in many different circumstances. So everyone, I'm going to leave it there today. Everyone, take care, be safe, watch your surroundings, and we'll talk again soon. Bye-bye.